Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm a former Boeing 737 pilot and a member of the PMDG 737 tech team. Now if you do want to know what that is, check the video description below. PMDG have just released the 737-900 and 737-900ER for Flight Simulator 2024. Coming at a price of $49.99, the package is completely independent from any of the previous versions, so if you're interested in just this plane, you don't need any, base version or something. You can just go and get that package and it'll work straight out of the box. Owners of the Flight Simulator 2020 version are eligible for a 60% discount, bringing the plane down to a price of just about $20. In euros, that's about 42 euros for the full plane, respectively 17 euros for the update. Now, in today's video we want to have a look into some of the differences between the already released 800 and the 900, and we'll also go about the differences between the 900 and the 900ER included in this package. Let's go ahead and start with a couple of the base facts. The 900ER and the 900 share the same length of fuselage and are about 2.6 meters longer than the 800. Now, Boeing achieved this by basically putting a 1.3 meter section in front of the wing and a 1.3 meter section at the back of the wing. Now, this comes with a couple of differences in the handling qualities of the aircraft. First of all, you got a larger distance between the nose wheel and the main wheels, meaning that you will have to use an increased oversteering technique in order to keep the main wheels centered on the taxiway centerline. It also means that the tail strike angle of the aircraft is reduced, and tail strike now basically happens about a degree lower than it would with the 800s. Now, I can really recommend you guys to try the tail strike. PMDG have implemented a rather interesting surprise there if you go for it. Now, Boeing originally developed the 737-900 and it comes with the same amount of emergency exits as the 800 does. Namely, you got one in the front, two over the wing, and one in the back. And due to certification requirements, basically you have to be able to evacuate all passengers within a certain amount of time. This means that the 900 has the same amount of maximum certified passengers than the 737-800 does. Now, in Boeing's world, that wasn't a problem because, well, Boeing intends the plane to have a business class and proper legroom for passengers. In a bean counter's airline world, that's quite a different thing, because obviously they want to stuff as many fare-paying passengers as possible into those aircraft, and this basically means that the 800 could already fit 189, which is the maximum certification. So the 900 wasn't very popular with airlines since it could only fit the same amount of passengers, just with increased comfort for extra legroom. Now, this was a problem, and this actually meant that not many 900s were sold. Airlines like KLM do have the aircraft, and a couple of US operators have the base 900 as well, since they usually fly business classes and therefore the seating wasn't too much a problem. But Boeing had to come up with something to make the plane more popular. Now, as mentioned earlier, they needed to increase the amount of passengers that could fit into the aircraft, which was restricted by the number of emergency exits. So what did they do? They slammed an extra exit into the aircraft, which we can see in the back over here in the form of the mid-exit door. Now, this is a pure emergency exit only. This is not used for any boarding or deboarding or catering or anything the likes. And adding this extra door meant that passengers could get out quicker, and therefore the plane was now certified to carry more passengers, which is what most operators are now doing. However, this comes with its own dedicated problem. All of a sudden, you have an aircraft that can carry a whole bunch of passengers, and that is heavier by itself, and all of that means that you've got a lot of extra weight, which in turn means the aircraft has to fly lower, burning more fuel. So what did Boeing do? They thought, well, we don't just have more space in the cabin with the 900 than we had with the 800, we also have more space in the cargo holds. And then somebody thought, well, with all those Boeing business jets, we're just stuffing additional fuel tanks into the cargo compartments, thereby increasing the range. Let's do the same thing with the 900. And here was born the 737-900 extended range, which basically has additional fuel tanks stuffed into the cargo holds. The problem with that? The weight of the aircraft increases once again. So this means that the 900ER basically cruises at about flight level 330 to flight level 350 compared to the typical 37 or 39 that you reach with a fully loaded 737-800. All of a sudden, the plane had a range of approximately transcontinental United States range, or you can even get it out to Hawaii from the west coast, and it can fly about 6 to 6.5 hours with a full load of passengers. Now, this makes it pretty interesting for pilots as well, since suddenly you're dealing with completely different aerodynamic effects there than you would with the 800. The 800 is already rather tight when you go up to the maximum flight levels. The 900 will have similar effects but at much lower altitude, making it quite interesting to pilot. Now, just watch that range on your speed indicator getting closer and closer, bringing the plane close to coffin corner, while at the same time you're just at about flight level 330. I tell you, pretty interesting one to fly. Even on short route, you will typically not get it above flight level 350, just due to the increased payload and the increased weight of the airframe. Now, from here, going into the cockpit, there are a couple of nice things that we can have a look at. So let's start with changes in the flight deck. The 900ER has a very similar flight deck to the 800s, and in fact Boeing did not even include the gauges for the additional fuel tanks that you would find in the Boeing business jet. Like the business jet would have an extra fuel panel down here, Boeing did not include that with the 900ER, but you actually do have increased fuel capacity, which is shown on the fuel gauge down here in the totalizer, but interestingly enough there are no separate gauges in the dedicated units. Yep, that's about how far Boeing goes to make planes interesting, isn't it? Now, try that with the conventional fuel option and you will actually only have the complete totalizer available down in the FMC. Interesting to fly with a plane that doesn't have a proper fuel gauge fitted. But that's how Boeing built the aircraft. Make it interesting. Now, apart from that, the cockpit of the 900 is very similar to that of the 800, but one thing that is really worth pointing out here is that PMDG does deliver fully verified airline configs for pretty much any of the major 737-900 and 900ER operators, namely being Alaska, Delta and United from the United States and KLM from Europe, where KLM operates the 900, so the base 900, while Alaska, Delta and United all have the ER, with I think Delta also having a couple of base 900 aircraft. Now, those operators pretty much all have the heads-up display fitted, which is quite an interesting change if you are into real-world operations over there. And that just gets you a little more interesting operation there if you do want to try and stick to realism. Apart from that, as mentioned earlier, you should really try the tail strike, which PMDG have implemented very nicely. And you will also find differences in the cockpit configuration over here, with the additional lights for the mid-exit doors being added to the flight deck. Now that is basically your 737-900. Overall, an interesting package coming at a lower price than the 737-800 does, because there is only the 900 and 900ER included, while the 800 has the 800 and then also the two freighter models and the business jet, which simply makes it a larger package than the 900. That's why it's cheaper. The amount of features is exactly the same, and the same upgrade pricing is also available. On a last word of closing out this video, I do ask everyone to stay respectful in the comments. I know that there are some people who feel rather heated when it's about PMDG aircraft. Just stay respectful, and then we don't have to delete anything in the comments either. Thank you very much for watching. Now, let me know how you like the 900 if you've bought the package, and let me know how you like the discount. Thank you very much for watching. As always, like, comment and subscribe, and if you really love what I'm doing on this channel, I would appreciate a small donation through the Buy Me a Coffee link in the video description below.